It is every single day. It feels like we're just wading through this massive ocean of information.
Oh, absolutely. News, social media, opinions, everywhere you look.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. So for this deep dive, we thought, let's give you, our listener, a bit of a life raft. Some practical tools to navigate all that noise.
Tools to think smarter, not necessarily harder, right, in your everyday life.
Exactly.
We've dug into a really fascinating set of sources, actually, that get right to the core of critical thinking. Think of this as maybe a personal guide to figuring out how to analyze information more effectively.
Okay, great. So let's unpack this a bit. We're essentially looking to build a sort of mental toolkit for everyone listening.
That's a good way to put it.
We'll explore what critical thinking, really means, why it's so vital today. Then maybe tackle how to question those assumptions we all carry around.
Yeah, the hidden ones especially. And we'll also try to demystify logical fallacies.
Oh, definitely need that.
Right.
And figure out how to evaluate evidence like a pro.
Yes, and see how all this can lead to better decisions, better problem solving for you personally.
And you mentioned it's not just about work or big decisions,
Yeah.
right? It touches other parts of life, too.
We're not stopping there, no. We'll also dive into how these skills can actually enrich your relationships.
Interesting.
And the importance of having like a growth mindset to keep sharpening your thinking. Plus some really straightforward exercises you can start using, well, today.
Okay, and here's where I think it gets really interesting for people. We all have those moments, right? Where we look back and think, why on earth did I believe that? Or how did I fall for that?
Happens to the best of us.
So this deep dive hopefully will shine a light on some of those sneaky ways our assumptions and biases can trip us up.
And crucially, give you some concrete strategies to kind of take back control of your own thought process.
Yeah, ready to jump in.
Absolutely. Let's maybe start right at the beginning. What is critical thinking exactly? Our sources really stress that it's not about, being negative or just poking holes in things.
Right, it's not just being critical of everything, it's more constructive.
Way more constructive. It's about actively engaging with information, really understanding it, breaking it down, evaluating it carefully.
So you can form your own well-reasoned judgments, not just parroting what you heard.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that the sources frame it as a deliberate process.
Okay.
It involves analysis, dissecting complex ideas,
Yeah.
evaluation checking if the arguments or evidence actually hold up, synthesis, putting different pieces together to see the bigger picture, and importantly, reflection, looking at how we are thinking about it.
That reflection bit seems really key. Like for you and me, stopping and asking, hang on, am I jumping to conclusions here?
Are my own feelings getting in the way? Yeah.
Like a little internal alarm bell for clear thinking.
Precisely. And the sources also highlight being open-minded. That's critical.
Being willing to consider new ideas,
Yeah.
even the uncomfortable ones.
Especially if they challenge what we already believe. Yeah. Particularly if there's good evidence pointing that way.
Okay, so critical thinking is this active, analytical, self-aware way of dealing with information. But is it something you're just born with? Or can we actually get better at it?
Oh, the sources are really clear on this. It's a skill.
Okay, good.
And like any skill, playing piano, learning a language, you can definitely get better with practice. It's not some, secret magic talent only a few people have.
That's actually really encouraging for all of us. So it's less about innate genius and more about putting in the mental reps, basically.
You got it. Consistent mental exercise.
Now, you often hear critical thinking lumped together with problem solving and decision making. Are they kind of the same thing, or?
They're definitely related, very closely linked, but the sources explain that critical thinking is more like the foundation for the other two.
Oh, okay.
Problem solving is, focused on tackling a specific challenge and finding a solution. Critical thinking gives you the sharp tools to analyze that problem properly in the first place.
So critical thinking helps you dig down to the real root of the issue, not just the surface stuff.
Exactly that. And when it comes to making decisions, choosing which way to go, critical thinking lets you look at your options carefully, weigh the likely outcomes.
And make choices based on logic and evidence, rather than just, a gut feeling or habit.
Right. Not just pure intuition, though intuition can play a role, but it's about reasoned judgment.
Makes sense. So critical thinking is like the engine driving effective problem solving and decision making in your life. Okay, let's zoom in on something you brought up earlier, questioning assumptions. This feels huge.
It really is. The sources describe assumptions as these often invisible forces shaping how we think.
The things we just accept as true without really checking.
Pretty much, yeah. Without necessarily having hard facts to back them up. And they can come from our culture, our upbringing, personal experiences, societal norms, even just logical leaps we make unconsciously.
They're like mental shortcuts, aren't they? Sometimes helpful, but other times.
Other times they can steer us way off course if we don't examine them. And the tricky part is they often operate below the level of our conscious awareness.
Sneaky.
Very. They can reinforce our biases, they can blind us to new possibilities, they can completely warp how we interpret events. The sources really hammer home that actively questioning these assumptions is a cornerstone of critical thinking.
Okay, so how can you and I actually start spotting these hidden assumptions? Are there practical ways to bring them out into the open?
Yeah, the sources suggest a few key things. First, just cultivating more self-awareness about your own potential biases.
Paying attention to your own thought patterns.
Exactly. Looking for patterns that might hint you're relying on assumptions and asking yourself directly, what actual proof do I have for believing this?
Or maybe, what if the opposite were true?
That's a really powerful one. What if I'm wrong about this? It forces you to consider alternatives.
Definitely opens things up.
Another really valuable thing the sources suggest is actively seeking out different perspectives.
Talking to people who see the world differently.
Yes, engaging with people from different backgrounds, different viewpoints, that can really throw your own unchallenged assumptions into sharp relief. And finally, they suggest testing your assumptions whenever possible. If you assume, say, a certain way of doing something at work will be best, maybe try it and see what actually happens.
Yeah, there's some real-world data.
Exactly. Get feedback to see if your assumption holds water.
I like the treating assumptions almost like hypotheses you can test. Okay, so we've talked about spotting flawed thinking in ourselves. What about when we're looking at arguments or information coming from others? That's where understanding logical fallacies comes in handy for you, right?
Absolutely. Logical fallacies are basically errors in reasoning. They can make an argument sound convincing, even if it's actually flawed or, well, manipulative sometimes.
Gotcha.
And the sources give a great rundown of some common ones you'll definitely encounter in daily life.
Okay, lay some on us. What are the big ones we should watch out for?
Well, a really common one is the ad hominem fallacy.
Okay, what's that?
That's when, instead of addressing the substance of someone's argument, you attack the person making the argument.
Ah, playing the man, not the ball.
Exactly, like dismissing someone's valid point about, say, city planning just because you think they dress funny, or something irrelevant like that.
We see that online constantly. Okay, what else?
The false dilemma, sometimes called the either fallacy.
That sounds familiar.
This is when someone presents only two options as if they're the only possibilities, when in reality, there might be many other alternatives or nuances.
Like you're either with us or against us.
Precisely. You either support this policy 100%, or you want the whole project to fail. It ignores any middle ground, any alternative solutions.
Yeah, that black and white thinking can really shut down productive discussion.
It really can. Another big one is the straw man fallacy.
Straw man, okay.
This happens when someone distorts or exaggerates their opponent's argument to make it seem weaker and easier to attack.
So they build up this flimsy, fake version of the other person's point.
And then knock that down, claiming victory. It's arguing against something the other person didn't even say.
Clever, but dishonest, yeah.
Very. Then there's the appeal to authority.
Oh, like, well, Dr. So-and-so said it, so it must be true.
Exactly. It assumes something is true simply because an authority figure claims it is, without necessarily providing independent evidence. Now, expert opinions are valuable, of course.
But they shouldn't be the only reason to believe something. You still need the evidence.
Correct. Just because a celebrity endorses a health supplement doesn't automatically mean it works or is right for you.
Got it. Any others jump out from the sources?
Yeah, they also mention things like hasty generalization, drawing a huge conclusion from just one or two examples.
Like seeing one bad driver from a certain place and assuming everyone there drives badly.
Perfect example. And the bandwagon fallacy, basically assuming something's right or good just because lots of other people believe it or are doing it. Everyone's buying this phone, so it must be the best.
Popularity doesn't equal correctness.
Not necessarily. So recognizing these fallacies is a key skill for you, the listener, to evaluate arguments based on their actual merit, their logic and evidence, not just surface tricks or popularity.
This is incredibly useful for sifting through, well, everything you encounter.
Okay.
Speaking of evaluating information, our sources really underscore the critical role of evidence. Why is that so central to critical thinking for you?
Because evidence is what provides the factual grounding for logical reasoning. Without solid evidence, your opinions, your decisions, they're much more likely to be swayed by assumptions, biases, emotions.
Which aren't always the most reliable guides, are they?
Not consistently, no. Evidence offers objective information that can hopefully lead you to more accurate, more reliable conclusions. The sources stress that critical thinking isn't just passively soaking up information, it's actively scrutinizing its validity and its relevance for you.
Okay, but presumably not all evidence is created equal. What different kinds of evidence should you be aware of?
That's a great point. Our sources outline several types. There's empirical evidence that's based on direct observation, experimentation, things you can measure or experience, often seen as very strong.
Okay.
Then there's statistical evidence, using numbers, data, surveys to show trends or correlations.
Right.
Testimonial evidence comes from personal accounts or expert statements. Anecdotal evidence, which is based on individual stories or isolated examples, is generally considered less reliable because one person's story might not represent the norm.
Could be an outlier.
Exactly. And finally, documentary evidence, written records, historical documents, official reports, that sort of thing.
That's a really helpful breakdown for you to have in mind. So when you need evidence, how should you go about gathering good, relevant stuff?
Well, the sources say the first step is always to clearly define the question or problem you're actually trying to address. What do you need evidence for?
Get specific.
Yes. Then seek out a variety of sources. Don't just rely on one article or one perspective. Get a more rounded view. Critically prioritize credible sources. That means looking for peer-reviewed journals if it's science, recognized experts in a field, reputable news organizations with fact-checking standards.
Do your due diligence on the source itself.
Absolutely. And always try to verify key information across multiple independent sources. If only one place is reporting something extraordinary, be skeptical.
Good advice. Triangulate the information, maybe.
Mhm.
And once you have the evidence, how do you decide if it's actually any good, if it's trustworthy for you?
The sources give us several criteria to use as filters. First, source credibility. Is the author or organization an expert? Do they have a track record of accuracy, any conflicts of interest? Then, relevance. Does this piece of evidence actually directly support the specific claim being made? Or is it slightly off topic?
Okay.
Check for consistency. Does this evidence align with other reliable information you've found on the subject, or does it contradict everything else?
Red flag, it's way out there.
Could be. Consider timeliness. Is the information current enough for your needs? Medical advice from 1950 might not be relevant today, for example.
Good point.
And finally, assess objectivity. Is the information presented fairly, or does the source seem to have a strong bias or agenda that might be skewing the facts?
These are excellent filters for you, the listener, to apply to pretty much any information you come across. Okay, let's shift gears slightly and think about how critical thinking actually plays out in your day-to-day life, especially when you're facing decisions.
Right, this is where it gets really practical. The sources offer a pretty clear framework for applying critical thinking to decision-making. And the very first step for you is to clearly define the decision itself. What exactly is the problem you're trying to solve or the goal you're trying to reach with this decision?
That initial clarity seems crucial. If you don't even know what you're deciding about, how can you make a good choice?
You really can't. It sets the stage. Then the next phase is gathering relevant information.
Researching the options.
Researching options, maybe seeking advice from people you trust who know something about it, reflecting on similar decisions you've made before, what worked, what didn't.
Okay.
Next, you identify and carefully evaluate all the feasible alternatives. Don't just stop at the first one or two.
Brainstorm a bit wider.
Exactly. And then systematically weigh the potential pros and cons of each viable option for you. What are the likely benefits? What are the potential downsides or risks?
That structured approach really forces you to move beyond just your initial reaction or preference, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It encourages logical analysis. After that thorough evaluation, you make your decision. And importantly, you take action on it. A decision without action isn't very useful.
Sure.
But it doesn't end there for you. The final, crucial step is to reflect on the outcome. How did it turn out? What did you learn from this experience that you can apply next time?
So it's a loop, really, a continuous cycle of learning and improving your decision-making.
Yeah.
And what about common pitfalls? Are there mistakes people often make when deciding things?
Oh, yes. The sources point out several common cognitive biases that can really trick you up. Confirmation bias is a big one.
Where you just look for info that agrees with what you already think.
Exactly. You unconsciously favor information that confirms your existing beliefs and ignore evidence that challenges them. Overconfidence bias is another thinking you know more or are better at something than you actually are, which can lead to taking unwise risks.
Hmm.
The sunk cost fallacy can be painful. That's when you find it hard to abandon a course of action, even if it's failing, just because you've already invested so much time, money, or effort into it.
Throwing good money after bad, as they say.
Pretty much. And even something like decision fatigue, just being mentally worn out from making too many choices, can lead to poorer quality decisions later on.
Interesting.
Being aware that these biases exist is really the first step for you to try and counteract their influence.
It's like knowing about the blind spots in your car mirror helps you drive more safely. Critical thinking helps you spot these mental blind spots. Okay, another huge area where this applies is problem solving, right?
Absolutely. The sources really emphasize how critical thinking helps you approach problems systematically, logically, breaking them down into more manageable pieces for you.
Instead of just feeling overwhelmed by the whole big mess.
Exactly. And the first step, much like decision-making, is to fully understand and clearly define the problem. What is the actual issue here? Often that means looking beyond the immediate symptoms to identify the underlying root cause for you.
That's that peeling back the onion layers idea again, isn't it? Getting to the core.
Precisely. Once you've got a clear definition, the next step is often to break the problem down into smaller components. What are the key elements involved? What are the different facets of this issue?
Makes it less daunting.
It does. Then you generate a range of potential solutions, brainstorming freely at first, not judging ideas too quickly, and then evaluating those potential solutions based on criteria like feasibility, potential impact, resources required for you.
So again, it's about exploring options, not just grabbing the first, easiest idea that pops into your head.
Exactly. And then critically evaluating each promising solution, weighing the pros and cons, considering potential obstacles or unintended consequences before you commit to one.
Thinking it through.
Yes. And finally, it's about implementing the chosen solution and then monitoring its effectiveness. Is it actually working? Do we need to adjust our approach for you?
And similar to decisions, are there common traps people fall into when trying to solve problems?
Yes, definitely. The sources mention things like maybe overcomplicating the problem unnecessarily, or conversely, oversimplifying it.
Okay.
Relying too heavily on solutions that worked in the past, even if the current situation is different, that's called functional fixedness sometimes.
Right. Using the same old hammer for every new nail.
Exactly. Ignoring emotional factors that might actually be part of the problem or solution. And a big one is failing to adapt. Sticking rigidly to an initial plan even when it's clearly not working out. Critical thinking encourages more flexibility and analysis for you.
It sounds like it's about staying open, open to new information, open to changing course based on what you learn.
Yeah.
Now, all this talk about internal processes.
Yeah.
But critical thinking isn't just about you in your own head, is it? It impacts how you deal with other people, especially in relationships.
Oh, massively. The sources dedicate a good chunk to this. They highlight how critical thinking can really improve communication and help you navigate relationships more smoothly, more effectively.
How so?
Well, it starts with trying to assess situations more objectively, stepping back from your immediate emotional reactions or personal biases, trying to see things clearly for you.
That sounds hard.
Yeah.
Especially in the heat of an argument with someone you care about.
It is hard, but critical thinking prompts you to pause, to consider multiple perspectives, to genuinely try and understand where the other person might be coming from, even if you disagree.
Putting yourself in their shoes, so to speak.
Exactly. And skills like active listening, really listening to understand, not just to reply and asking clarifying questions, becomes super important here.
So it's about making sure you actually get what they're saying and feeling, not just formulating your rebuttal while they're talking.
Precisely. And when conflicts inevitably arise, critical thinking can help you stay calmer, identify the core issue instead of getting bogged down in accusations or blame.
And work toward solutions that actually try to address everyone's needs, or at least acknowledge them for you.
Yes, it's about aiming for resolution with clarity and, importantly, empathy.
That makes a ton of sense for you. Approaching disagreements critically but also empathetically seems way more likely to lead to constructive outcomes and ultimately stronger relationships. Does self-awareness play a role here too?
Absolutely crucial. Understanding your own values, your beliefs, your emotional triggers, what pushes your buttons, is essential for communicating effectively and avoiding unnecessary misunderstandings for you.
Knowing yourself better.
Yes. Self-reflection helps you see how your own biases or assumptions might be coloring your interactions with others.
It's about managing yourself, so you can engage with others more intentionally, less reactively.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground defining critical thinking, seeing how it applies to assumptions, fallacies, evidence, decisions, problems, relationships. Our sources also really stress that developing this skill isn't a one and done thing, right? It's ongoing.
Yes, exactly. And that's where the idea of a growth mindset really comes into play for you.
Okay, tell us about that.
The sources explain that critical thinking isn't some fixed trait you either have or don't. It's a skill that absolutely improves with practice and, crucially, the right attitude. A growth mindset is basically the belief that your abilities, your intelligence, they aren't set in stone. They can be developed through dedication, effort, and learning. Right? It's the opposite of a fixed mindset where you think, I'm just not good at this, and give up.
Precisely. And for developing critical thinking, having that growth mindset is vital. It means you see challenges not as threats, but as opportunities to learn.
Hmm.
You view mistakes or failures not as proof of your inadequacy, but as valuable feedback information you can use to improve. It helps you persist when things get tough for you.
That reframing of failure is powerful. It becomes data, not disaster.
Exactly. It fuels your curiosity and your commitment to keep getting better at thinking.
So how can you, our listener, actively cultivate this growth mindset, specifically for critical thinking?
Well, the sources offer some practical strategies. Things like actively seeking out challenges that stretch your thinking rather than sticking to what's easy.
Get out of the comfort zone.
Yes. Consciously reframing setbacks, asking, what can I learn from this? Instead of just feeling bad, actively seeking out and using constructive feedback, even if it's hard to hear sometimes, focusing on the process of learning and improving, not just the final outcome or grade. Staying curious, committing to being a lifelong learner. And a really simple but powerful one, consciously replacing thoughts like, I can't figure this out, with, okay, how can I figure this out? Or what
Yeah.
strategies could I try here?
That little linguistic shift from I can't to how can I feels incredibly empowering for you.
Okay, and to really build those critical thinking muscles, the sources also suggest some specific practical exercises you can do, right? Think that people can start doing today.
They do. Simple things, actually. One suggestion is for you to pick a news article or opinion piece and actively analyze it. Identify the main argument, evaluate the sources they use, look for any potential biases or fallacies we talked about.
Like a mini critical thinking workout.
Exactly. Solving logic puzzles, brain teasers, riddles, those are fun ways for you to practice analytical reasoning.
Yeah, I always feel like my brain gets a good stretch trying to solve those. It does. Another powerful one is reflecting on recent decisions you made. Go back and examine the factors that influenced your choice. Think about the actual outcome, what you might do differently next time for you.
Learning from your own experience?
Mm-hmm. Engaging in structured debates or discussions, even informal ones with friends, where you take opposing sides on a topic, forces you to organize your thoughts, anticipate counterarguments, and consider different viewpoints.
Builds argumentative and perspective-taking skills.
Yes. And there's a technique called the 5 whys.
Ah, yes, where you keep asking why to get to the root cause.
That's the one. A simple but surprisingly effective way for you to dig deeper when analyzing a problem. Don't just stop at the surface
Just
explanation.
keep probing.
Right. Actively seeking out and trying to understand viewpoints that oppose your own strongly held beliefs is another great exercise. It
Yeah.
really challenges your assumptions.
Forces you to see the other side's logic, even if you don't agree.
Exactly. And finally, practicing mindful reflection, just taking a few moments regularly to notice your own thought patterns, your emotional reactions, your potential biases as they happen, can build that crucial self-awareness muscle for you.
So it sounds like a mix of active analysis, deliberate practice in problem solving, and debate, self-reflection, and intentionally seeking out different perspectives.
Yeah,
All really actionable steps for you to build that critical thinking ability.
they really are. And the sources consistently emphasize that this is a skill you develop over time. It's cumulative. The more you consciously practice these kinds of activities, the more second nature critical thinking will become in your daily life.
Okay, well, we have covered a phenomenal amount of ground in this deep dive. Hopefully, you, our listener, are feeling a bit more equipped now with some valuable insights and, more importantly, practical strategies to think smarter, not harder.
Absolutely. And just to maybe quickly circle back on a few key takeaways for you, please remember the importance of questioning your assumptions. Those cultural ones, personal ones, societal ones, even logical leaps. Questioning them helps you see beyond your biases, opens up new ways of understanding.
And when you encounter information, really make an effort to evaluate the evidence critically. Know the different types: empirical, statistical, testimonial, anecdotal, documentary, and always check that source for credibility, relevance, consistency, timeliness, and objectivity.
For making better decisions, try that structured framework we discussed. Define the decision clearly, gather your info, identify alternatives, weigh the pros and cons carefully, make the choice, act on it, and then crucially, reflect on how it went for you. Learn from it.
And keep an eye out for those common logical fallacies in your own thinking, too. Things like attacking the person ad hominem, false dilemmas, straw man arguments, hasty generalizations, appeals to questionable authority, or just popularity. Recognizing them helps you avoid being misled or making flawed arguments yourself.
And definitely try to cultivate that growth mindset, embrace challenges, learn from feedback and failures, focus on the process, stay curious, and practice replacing "I can't" with "how can I" when you face something tricky for you.
And finally, don't forget how powerful critical thinking can be in your relationships. It helps you assess situations more objectively, really understand different perspectives through active listening and empathy, and resolve conflicts with more clarity and connection.
So maybe here's a final thought for you to take away and chew on. Think about one assumption, just one that you've held recently. Could be about anything, big or small. A person, a situation, a belief.
Okay.
Now really ask yourself, how might questioning that specific assumption change your understanding? How might it influence what you do next? The whole journey of critical thinking really is about that continuous process of learning, questioning, and applying these tools to your everyday life for hopefully greater clarity and just, well, better outcomes all around.